Morning sun salutations! Here is your wrestling news. The Undertaker's scrapped WrestleMania 36 plans have been revealed. An AEW star makes a shock return. And a WWE title has been vacated. We'll talk about it in a bit. WrestleMania 36 didn't quite go according to plan, did it? No, it wasn't meant to be an empty performance centre. It'll go down in history as one of the strangest times in WrestleMania history. We were meant to see lots on this show that didn't pan out for multiple reasons. We were also meant to see, amongst all of that, a proper match between The Undertaker and AJ Styles. It's been confirmed recently that, yes, Undertaker and AJ were set to have a straight singles match at WrestleMania that would see Undertaker pick up a justified win over AJ Styles. AJ has said on several occasions that this was going to be the match that he wanted to give The Undertaker to end on a high note with. And whilst we didn't get that, we got the Boneyard match. That was all the fun, wasn't it? But there's an extra caveat to this, as well as knowing that this was going to be a singles match between The Undertaker and AJ Styles. During an interview with Ad Age Remote, Stephanie McMahon was talking about the cinematic matches in general, which led to a bit of a revelation about Undertaker's plans originally for Mania. She said the Boneyard match was a 20-minute movie sequence and it was cut to Metallica because Metallica was going to be a part of WrestleMania. Their music was going to be a part of Undertaker's entrance. When everything changed, they said, we still want to be a part of this if we can. We're not backing out. We are very grateful to Metallica for helping score the entire sequence. It certainly feels like we were going to get possibly even a live performance from Metallica as part of Undertaker's WrestleMania entrance. Now, Metallica have worked with WWE before. They provided music for Triple H's entrance. They did the soundtrack to SummerSlam 2003. They've done lots of other bits for them as well. So there's a nice relationship with them there. The idea of us getting American badass biker Taker played out to the ring by Metallica. I can't think of anybody that would have been unhappy with that. Okay, maybe you would have been unhappy with that. Oh, and you would have been unhappy with that actually, but apart from you two, I think everybody else would have been happy with that. Oh, and in other Undertaker news, just want to chuck this in there. Undertaker's on TikTok now. Yeah, it's a verified Undertaker account with something like, at time of recording, 56,000 followers. Sadly, no TikToks yet. I'm excited to watch Undertaker in that beautiful mansion of a living room that he has doing That's, if that happens, that is the end of The Undertaker, isn't it? So there was a big moment last night for an independent wrestling star in AEW. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But first of all, there was a return last night, a shock return for Sammy Guevara. Now, Sammy Guevara hasn't been on AEW TV for about a month now. This follows the revelation of a podcast interview in which he said some rather unsavory comments towards Sasha Banks, and this got shared online. Consequently, he was suspended from AEW without pay. His salary went to a women's charity in Jacksonville, and he was to take sensitivity training. It was during the tag team match featuring the Inner Circle versus the Jurassic Express that we saw Serpentico get involved. Now, Serpentico had been ringside all night long amongst the wrestlers, and when Serpentico got involved, we thought, oh, Serpentico joined the Inner Circle. Okay, why not? Removing of the mask to reveal Sammy Guevara. He'd been there all along. He'd been hiding in plain sight all night long. This is Edge with the camera in the Hell in a Cell once again. So Sammy Guevara back now as part of the Inner Circle. Now, there will be a lot of discussions on sort of where Sammy Guevara sits in terms of long-term plans for AEW. I know a lot of people have already their opinions made on Sammy Guevara, and all are totally justified, whichever way you sit on it. But with Sammy Guevara, when it comes to Sammy Guevara and the horrible things he said in the podcast a few years back, I'm grateful for the fact that AEW dealt with it by suspending him, by donating money to an appropriate charity, and also with Sammy Guevara and Sasha Banks having a conversation after that came out. I think that was important to do as well. The fact that Sasha Banks has put out there that, look, we talked about it, Sammy knows what he said was wrong, and it's positive to see that that was a conversation that went down. However this ends up panning out, Sammy Guevara now back as part of the inner circle in AEW. Arguably the biggest talking points for last night's AEW was the surprise that Jon Moxley talked about. The one that Jon Moxley was incredibly excited about, the one he said that hardcore fans would be excited about as well. And you know what? He was bang on the money. It was, of course, the open challenge for Cody's TNT Championship being responded by Eddie bleeping Kingston. Eddie Kingston is a bit of an indie legend, and he was part of NWA Power before things shut down there. He's been all over the place. He was in the northeast of England. I'm gonna name drop because all the other lads work with all the wrestlers on the planet, and I've got this one. I want this. Got to work with Eddie Kingston myself just before everything got shut down. And what an addition to any locker room. Just speaks as he finds. Genuinely a lovely guy. Great privilege of mine to announce him. But it was great to see him on Dynamite last night. Just cuts an unbelievably great promo that I've watched about 5 times now. Very real, earthy words from Eddie Kingston. Has a really good, kind of predictable match with Cody. And then afterwards cuts a very emotional promo. Where he does say, I'm going to be back, I'm going to be back. We don't know if he will be back, but if the internet has anything to say by it, he will. Because when I last checked, hashtag sign Eddie Kingston was appearing on my timeline all over the place. You know what? That is certainly a cause among many worth championing. To see Eddie Kingston on that level, to get behind Eddie, in the way that the internet has is amazing. I'd love to see Eddie Kingston do more stuff in AEW. We've only got a taste of what Eddie can do. But of course, for everything AEW based, Jack will be along later on today with AEW Dynamite Graded. He's going to break down all the happenings from last night's Dynamite, and Ross will be here with the AEW TF moments as well. Sad news if you had plans to ride the ocean with Chris Jericho this year. That ain't happening. It was put out that the Rock and Wrestling Rager has been suspended until next year. This is Chris Jericho's big wrestling cruise that has happened twice already. This is going to be the third one. They were going to film an episode of Dynamite on the cruise as well, but it's still, I believe that's still going to happen, but the whole thing's been moved to next year now. The Rager will now sail October the 21st to October the 25th, 2021 from Miami, Florida to Grand Bahama Island. They want you to know that if you purchased rooms for the Triple Whammy cruise, you have the option to retain the same room for the new dates, receive a future cruise credit, or request a full refund if you so choose. This might even put the kibosh on an idea that Kenny Omega threw out on the last the last Jericho cruise, where he mentioned about bringing in 6-man tag team titles and holding a tournament on board the Rock and Wrestling Rager. And I don't know whether or not that was a serious idea. I know they've just started a tournament on AEW as it is, but something completely different. Don't know whether the plans are to bring in a 6-man tag team belt, but if they were, it's not going to happen probably now until next year, if at all. And finally, don't you forget about NXT Graded later on today. You and I are going to break down everything that happened on this week's episode of NXT from Full Sail University. Now, one of the things that happened there, I'm not going to spoil everything that happened on last night's show, but I am going to mention a big piece of news that came from it that you may have already seen. William Regal teased an announcement. The way Regal teased the announcement, by the way, I thought he was retiring, so that is a relief. But it's not to do with the retirement of William Regal. The announcement was that Keith Lee is vacating the NXT North American Championship. Keithy 2 belts is becoming Keithy 1 belt. The reasoning behind this, according to Keith Lee, is because he wants to present more opportunities for people within NXT if they want to compete for other belts. And I guess it's his way of kind of going, I'm unstoppable. It's unfair if 2 divisions have to put up with me beating everybody. So I'm going to vacate this one, and you can have that one back. So a magnanimous decision, kind of sort of, by Keith Lee. The plan for the North American Championship is going to remain vacant until August at NXT TakeOver 30, where we will have a multi-man ladder match to determine the brand new NXT North American champion. And who will be in that match? Well, they're going to decide over the next couple of weeks at a series of triple threat matches. We had the first one last night on NXT, and whoo, my days, did it set the pace? It certainly did. But we'll talk all about that later on today on NXT Graded. You and I are going to talk about everything that happened last night on NXT. So that is your wrestling news for today. Hey, if you don't already, I always like to give you a little nudge on this. If you subscribe to the Cultaholic Wrestling Podcast, you get daily wrestling news in your ears Monday to Friday. You get classic reviews of Raw and SmackDown, and you get episodes of Desert Island Graps every single Wednesday. You may have seen some of the episodes here on the Cultaholic YouTube channel. We do episodes every single week, and we spoke yesterday to a bit of a hero of mine, somebody that if you follow WCPW you'll know all about. Rory Coyle is my guest on Desert Island Graps, and also, little hint, it's a little sort of self-involved hint, but if you're a fan of Pablo, we've got the Pablo origin story in that interview. If that is not a wrestling tease, I don't know what is. But subscribe to the Cultaholic Wrestling Podcast. You'll get loads of stuff. As well as all of that, you get obviously the wrestling podcast with Jack, Ross and Maff on the weekends as well. And next week, a little special something that Ross and I have put together for the podcast exclusively. Ooh, subscribe to the podcast. Find out all about it there. Do that. Do all of the things listed there. And then watch that video. Love you, bye.